Hello, welcome back to my channel. My name is Ashley and this is another bookish video. Hello friends, welcome back to my channel. It is now January 1st, 2024. Happy New Year. And that means it is time for me to announce my favorite books of the year. I am very excited to talk about these books today. I can't stop thinking about a lot of these books. And yeah, I am very excited about that. Excited to talk about these and share like why I love them so much. It'll be like very quick, like little like blurbs on like why I loved it. I'm not gonna go on like too much details on the like the premise of the book, but I do want to I will say a little bit about what it the book's about and like why I loved it. I have 15 here, and for the most part they are in no particular order except for my top 3 reads of the year. I could not put it these books in a specific order because I mean it can change and vary depending on how I'm feeling. But I loved all of these but just yeah, I have 3 that I absolutely love and can't stop thinking about, and I just had a great time reading them. So yeah, anyway, let's go ahead and get started with the books, my favorite books of the year. So the first book is actually a series that I love. I'm just counting it as one because I mean they were very quick reads. I didn't read them all in one sitting because the 5th volume just came out in December, so I just read that one, and I also read I read the 4th and 5th volume just recently in December, and then I read the first 3 over the summer of 2023, and that is the Heartstopper series. This series was so cute. I can't believe I kept putting it off. I love this series. It's the cutest gay romance and young adult, and I just loved it. It has very good rep on mental health rep, and it's just a very good young adult romance that was very cute. I just loved it so much, and I highly recommend. And I am very sad but excited that for the 6th and final volume of this, but I could read several more of these graphic novels. I love them so much. The next book that I have that is on my favorites list was actually the May book club pick for Katie Coulson's Patreon book club. And that book is Anyman by Amber Tamblyn. This was such a good book, and it discussed very dark and emotional topic of SA. This is a trigger this is a trigger warning in itself, the whole book. I would, if you have any triggers on SA, I would definitely maybe not read this one. But it was such a good story and depiction on how the media and social media handles people that have been SA, how that how they treat that and everything. And I just the writing was amazing, and I just really enjoyed reading this, and I highly recommend it. But I also don't recommend it because I said trigger warning. So yeah, very very good read. The next book I read in August, and it was really good, and that is Shark Heart by Emily Habeck. This was such a good story. Heartbreaking, emotional story, and the writing was amazing in this. I just it very emotional. There was times when I wanted to tear up. but yeah, very emotional, jarring, and like the name of it, it's about a man that like slowly turns into a shark, and like it's like about a marriage, like, and how they're dealing with it. But then there's other like storylines woven in, and it just like it like the when like the story gets brought together, like it's just so good, and I loved it. Highly recommend. The next book I have was actually another book club pick from Katie Colson for her Patreon. And I think this was one that was for August. I know it was for sure in the summer. And that is Yellowface by R.F. Kuang. This was so good. I loved it. I never enjoyed hating a main character more than I did in this book. This had very good depiction on like how like the publishing industry is, and like racial stereotypes and all of that. And yeah, I just thought it was very good, and I highly recommend if you haven't read it already. I know this one is a very hyped book, so, but yeah, if you have not read it, I definitely highly recommend it. The next book I read in November, and that is Daisy Jones and the Six. I listened to the audiobook of this, and I had such a good time. Thank you to anybody that recommended to listen to the audiobook, because yeah, that was definitely the way to go for this particular book, because it is an interview format about this band, and their like story on how they got together, and like their like how they got successful, and like it was just it was such a good story, and like I was not expecting like the way like the ending. And yeah, I had such a good time with this. I started watching the TV series, like the adapted TV series too, and I'm enjoying that as well. So yeah, I highly recommend this if you haven't already. And yeah, I definitely want to go ahead and read Taylor Jenkins Reid's like backlist books now, because yeah, this was such a like fun like read. The next book I also read in August, and that is Brutal Prince by Sophie Lark. This is a mafia romance, and it's kind of like a take on like Romeo and Juliet a little bit, because it's like two feuding families, like mafia family kind of, and like one is more like rich and the other is like not. But yeah, and then like there's like a rivalry, and then they have to set up like this marriage of convenience kind of thing. And so yeah, these two characters, I am blanking on the Ada and Callum, they do this like marriage of convenience, and then obviously they end up actually like falling in love. And I just had so much fun with this. Like, yeah, it was just like I read it in I read it so fast. Like, was this like a literary like masterpiece? No, but I just had such a fun time reading it, and I recommend if you love like mafia romance, and like yeah, I just had a good time reading it. The next book I read back in like February of 2023, and that is Voices in the Snow by Darcy Coates. This is the first book in the Black Winter series, and this was so good. Like, it's about this about Claire. She like wakes up in this like house, and she doesn't know, like she doesn't remember like how she got there. And like she wakes up, and then this like man is there, like mysterious man, and like she's like start like slowly like weird things start happening in this house. And then there is like a little bit of like a romance that happens too, but like yeah, like weird things happen. And I like, this was such a fun horror book, and I really need to continue on with this series, because yeah, I like it ends in a way that like you will want to pick up the next book right away, but I just haven't gotten to it yet. But yeah, I highly recommend this one. And yeah, it was a lot of fun. A great winter read. So if you're looking for like wintry like type books. This is a good one to read for the winter. The next book I have is Say You Swear by Megan Brandy. I read this back in September. This is a like sports romance, and there's a little bit of like a love triangle in it, and I love this one. Again, this is not a literary masterpiece or anything like that, but I loved it. I I read it so fast, and it made me emotional. It made me feel all the things, and I loved the relationship in this. And yeah, I just highly recommend it. It was so good. Next up is another book I read in September, and that is The Curveball by Megan Cousins. This is another like sport. It's like actually like a sports like broadcasting like sports romance. He's actually a ex like baseball player, but he suffered like an injury, and then he like had to stop playing. And then she's like in this like she's like one of like the like she works for this like sports broadcasting company. And also this has PCOS rep, which I have. So it was like nice reading a book that had like represented something that I have. Like it was such a good read. And I highly recommend. It was just a cute read. And by the way, there is no like spice in this. So if you love romance but don't love spice, this is a good book to read. But yeah, I loved it. It was such a cute little romance. I loved these two characters, Penelope and Jake. And yeah, it was just like a cute, like fun little sports romance. The next book I have is a book I actually read very recently in December, and that is Vipers and Virtuoses by Sav R. Miller. This is actually the sequel to Promises and Pomegranates, which I gave that book 3 stars, and I actually also read that like at the beginning of this year, or last year now, for 2023, and yeah, I only gave that one 3 stars. It was still a good time, but like this one was so much better. I loved it. I love the couple, Aiden and Riley. It was so good. There was some moments that were a little bit like kind of like cringy, and like I was questioning like why. It's a dark romance, and there are some like very like questionable things that happen in this, and like you would not like you would not condone these things in real life, obviously. But I still had like a good time. Like it was such a good time. Like I had a good time reading this. It's a stalker romance, so yeah, obviously it's not something like you have to go with it with a grain of salt on this. Like yeah, it was just a fun time. I loved it. It was such a good like fun read, and yeah, I loved it. Next book I read in October, and that is The Weight of Blood by Tiffany D. Jackson. This is kind of like a like loose kind of like retelling of The Shining. And it has very good depiction on like racism and all that. And yeah, this was such a good YA horror book. It was like I had such a fun time reading this, and highly recommend if you haven't already read it. Next up, I have a book I read in July, and that is Yours Truly by Abby Jimenez. I have read every single Abby Jimenez book, and I have loved pretty much all of them. I mean, I gave them all like either 4 or 5 stars, so I've enjoyed all of them. So, but yeah, this one was 5 stars. Obviously, it's on my favorites. But this is the sequel to Part of Your World, and this follows Brianna, which was the main character in Part of Your World, like her best friend, and then it also follows Jacob. And this has really good like anxiety rep in it, and like this I love their relationship, and like I love Jacob. Like he is such like the perfect like book boyfriend. And yeah, it was such a good read. Next up, I have a book I read in April, and I am questioning why I haven't read the sequel yet. And that is The Serpent and the Wings of Night by Carissa Broadbent. This is like a vampire fantasy romance, and it has like Hunger Games vibes. And yeah, I loved it so much. It was such a fun, like I love like the different trials, and I love like the relationship between the two characters. Like one's a human and one is a vampire, and like they have to kind of work together in these like trials. And yeah, I just had such a fun time reading this, and I really need to pick up the sequel for this. Okay, now we are going to talk about my top 3 reads of the year. Very excited to talk about these. These are books that I just can't stop thinking about, and I love them. So yeah, anyway, the first one I have is actually another Patreon book club pick from Katie Colson's Patreon book club, and that is Alone with You in the Ether by Olivia Blake. This was so good. It made me emotional. It made me like it made me feel all the feelings. It had such a good like representation of like mental health and how that affects relationships. And it had such beautiful writing, and I just cannot stop thinking about this. And I honestly really want to reread this book and like annotate it. Like I am very like sad that I did not annotate it, because there are some quotes that are just beautiful in this book. And yeah, I definitely honestly really want to reread this. Like I don't typically reread books anymore, but if I were to, I would definitely reread this so I can annotate it and like highlight some of the quotes that I absolutely loved in this. All right, and then number 2 is Still Beating by Jennifer Hartman. I love this book. This is very dark. It's a dark romance, and I would definitely check trigger warnings for this. It's basically about these 2 characters. They get like kidnapped and are trapped in this like room together, and like they kind of have to like lean on each other and like to try to like face like what is happening with them. And they, of course, like they end up falling in love. The guy is actually her sister's fiance, or I think boyfriend or fiance. I'm not, I think, yeah, it is fiance. Because I think they were talking about like getting married in the beginning. But yeah, very dark, but it made me so emotional, and I just loved it. Their like relationship, like I like can't recommend this enough. Like I loved it so much. But yeah, definitely check trigger warnings if you are going to read it. And then the last book I have may not be a surprise to anyone. It's probably the most hyped book, maybe not probably, it is probably like is the most hyped book of the year, or of 2023. And that is Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yarros. I love this book. I read it in like 1.5 days. Like I just could not put it down when I was reading it. It was just a fun time. Again, was this a literary masterpiece? No. The writing, not the best, but I just ate it up and loved like every minute of it. I loved Violet. I loved Xaden. Like I loved the dragons in this. Like I love it. I mean, I would say read it if you haven't, but I feel like everybody has already read this. But yeah, I it's hyped. I personally think it's hyped for a reason. It's very good. Like, it's fast paced. It's just a book that, like, it's a quick read, and it's like I just had such a good time reading it. Again, yeah, it's not like a literary masterpiece or anything, but I just had a really good time reading it. Love the world, love the characters, love that it had like dragons, and it also had like I can't remember, a like chronic illness. It had like a chronic illness rep in it, from Violet. Has a chronic illness, and yeah, I loved it so much. Definitely my favorite book of the year. I also read the sequel, Iron Flame. I love that one too. Gave that one 5 stars as well. But I like this first one. I just have it, like, I loved it a lot more, because it brought me into that world. And yeah, I'm excited to continue on with this series when she releases more in this series. But yeah, definitely my favorite book of the year. Okay, so that was all of my favorite books that I have read for the year. I did not mention this in the beginning, but I did read a total of 74 books this year. I did not hit my reading goal, but that is okay, because we are going to have an awesome reading year for 2024. But yeah, thank you so much for watching this video, and please let me know down in the comments what one of your favorite books of the year was. I'd love to know. And yeah, thank you for watching, and I hope you all have a wonderful day.